Hello, welcome to Nixon's the One. This episode is about the making of the new Nixon in the new media campaign that he used in 1968 to run successfully for the presidency. I'm Merrick Masters, a professor of business emeritus. You can find me at my YouTube channel at Merrick Masters. Today is April 17th, 2026. This is data I'm collecting as part of a process of finishing a book on Nixon's comeback to win the presidency in 1968. It's about, this episode, a Nixon-driven collaborative effort facilitated by an optimal campaign organization and media strategy suited for him. Few observations. The Nixon campaign of 1968 revolved around television. A new image of Nixon emerged which showed the positive parts of the old Nixon in a new light. Implementing this media strategy required building a campaign organization that protected Nixon from himself. H.R. Haldeman, John Mitchell, and Maurice Stans enabled this precondition. Various campaign advisors and consultants offered influential advice in the media-centric effort. Throughout the wilderness years from 63 to 68, Nixon exploited the political landscape, critical incidents, and technology to signify Nixon's the one. The old Nixon is evidenced in his last press conference in 1962, which you can view at the site here. The 1960 Nixon debate provided an insight into how television can be hazardous, particularly when you're compared so directly to a more favorable figure, media and otherwise, in the public spotlight. The Nixon media campaign of '68 took advantage of the rising dominance of television, as shown in the data on this table, which indicates that over 95% of the U.S. households in the U.S. had televisions at the time, and that a majority of the viewers relied primarily on television for their news. The new media team Nixon built included some old hands as well as some new, including H.R. Haldeman, who was his chief of staff during the campaign and later in the White House, but also at the time an executive for the J. Walter Thompson Agency. Lynn Garment, Frank Shakespeare, and Harry Trevlin filled out this team, which provided key advice to Nixon on how to run a media campaign with a new image in 1968. The media consultants and producers who were involved in this include Fuller, Smith, and Ross, the creative ad agency that was key to the Nixon new image, J. Rourke Productions, E. Howard and Company Public Relations, which provide campaign rally advertising, E.S. Jones, which did a lot of the 30, 40, and 60-second spots that were so impactful in '68, and John Donaldson Productions that produced A Time to Begin, a semi-documentary on Nixon used as a commercial in New Hampshire in 1968. A television-centered campaign strategy was illuminated by H.R. Haldeman in a memo he sent while vice president at the Thompson Agency to Richard Nixon, addressed Dear Dick on June 20th, 1967, which said, enclosed is the first draft of some general thoughts regarding political campaigning and some specific suggestions for implementation. I'm firmly convinced that the whole basic approach to campaign must be revised, and you are in an especially good position to do this in 1968. The Haldeman memo went on to say that the old tried and true methods of campaigning leave a candidate with no time to think, to study his opponent's strategy and statements, to develop his own strategy and statements. Nixon's perspectives on the use of television were provided by Harry Trevelyan, Lynn Garment, Pat Buchanan, and Ray Price. As Price said, it's not the man we have to change, but rather the received impression. Our concentrated viewing of clips at the CBS library showed that the greater the informality and spontaneity of Nixon's presentation on television, the better he came across. The media plan for 1968 presented Nixon really as the president in waiting, as confident, knowledgeable, matured, and decisive compared to the frenzied and hazard look of Lyndon Johnson. Nixon was presented as in sync with the forgotten or silent American, the middle American, so to speak. He was presented as a unifier, not a divider, as measured, not frazzled, as a responsible voice, not bellicose. This is reflected in A Time to Begin, the TV commercial documentary presented to highlight Nixon as he started his campaign in New Hampshire in 1968. Was also presented in a new format that Nixon used to present himself on television, which was one of an informal presentation in a semi-town hall setting with panelists, real American panelists, who asked him questions. This was produced by Roger Ailes, who went on to fame as the head of Fox News. There was also controversy during this time period between the admin, those on the creative side, particularly from the Eugene Jones production agency, which produced a lot of ads using still photographs, versus the Holy Trinity, a group of powerful aides in Nixon's corner, including Garment, Shakespeare, and Treleaven, that used still photographs and a voiceover of Nixon. Pat Buchanan, who was photographed here with Nixon, actually in 1966, is shown presenting in a memo to the candidate that he has problems with the Holy Trinity, the advisors, he said, who were thwarting the efforts to produce the kind of ads that Nixon thought he wanted, which were ads that were gutsy and made a presentation of him without having to use himself as a face to demonstrate the presentation, but using a voiceover instead. Second memo emphasized again the Holy Trinity and the adverse effect it was had on presenting a gutsy, powerful, impactful new Nixon. And he wanted to clear that up, and Nixon agreed with him, and so they got more of these types of ads out in the campaign. Here's a little bit about myself. I'm a former professor of business or management at Wayne State University. I've held several administrative positions. I'm working on a new book on Richard Nixon, which I titled The Phoenix, How Richard Nixon Rose from the Political Ashes to Win the Presidency in 1968. I'm also working on a new book on the new UAW under new leadership, and also one on federal sector labor management relations. Stay tuned for more episodes. Thank you for watching this and hope you enjoyed it. Have a nice evening.